Hooks have these four basic parts. Every hook starts with a trigger. Triggers are these things that tell us what to do next. Think about the products you use every day, your smartphone, those apps you can't resist checking, and your go-to websites. How did they manage to weave themselves into your daily routines? Hooked unpacks the psychological processes behind habit formation and reveals how companies can craft products that take full advantage of this. You'll learn why creating habit-forming products isn't just a smart move. It's the most powerful sales strategy a company can have. Ever wonder why you can't stop scrolling through your Twitter feed? I'll show you the science behind that too. And just as importantly, you'll gain insight into the ethical considerations of these designs, helping you steer clear of becoming a digital drug dealer. Changing or replacing established habits is no easy task. Every New Year's Eve, people make bold resolutions. Quit drinking, eat healthier, or exercise more. As the clock strikes midnight, we feel fully committed to those changes. But why is it that by January 5th, many of us are back on the couch, snacking on chips and sipping beer? The simple answer lies in our habits. Those behaviors we've grown so used to that we perform them almost unconsciously. Habits form because the brain is always looking for shortcuts, defaulting to what worked before. Take nail biting, for instance. If biting your nails helped relieve stress once, your brain remembers that and triggers the behavior automatically whenever you're nervous. The problem with habits is how tough they are to change. Even when we switch up our routines, the neural pathways of old habits remain in our brains, ready to resurface. This is why 2/3 of alcoholics relapse within a year after completing a detox program. No wonder we struggle with something as simple as a New Year's resolution. So, how do you actually adopt a new habit? The key is repetition. One study found that students who wanted to establish the habit of flossing their teeth were more successful when they repeated the behavior frequently. If frequent repetition isn't possible, the habit needs to be extremely useful to take root. Take Amazon, for example. People may not shop there daily, yet it has become a habit for many of us. Why? Despite the vast number of online stores available, Amazon's easy price comparison feature makes it so convenient that users form a habit of shopping there, even if it's only occasionally. Habit-forming products not only drive high revenues, but are also tough for competitors to challenge. If you take a look at the most successful businesses and products today, especially those online, you'll notice many of them share a common characteristic: they form habits. These are the products that seamlessly integrate into our daily routines, like a smartphone we instinctively check each morning for new messages. There are several advantages to offering habit-forming products. First, they create loyal long-term customers. Habits are notoriously hard to break, so people will likely stick with the product, extending their lifetime value to the company. That means consistent cash flow over time. Additionally, people love sharing habit-forming products with friends and family, which leads to organic word-of-mouth marketing. Facebook's rise is a prime example as users formed the habit of checking it daily. They invited friends, tagged them in photos, and generated a viral user base. Second, habit-forming products have a strong competitive edge. Since habits are so difficult to change, any new product trying to lure your customers has to be significantly better than what they're already using. Small improvements won't be enough. Take the QWERTY keyboard layout, for instance. Despite more efficient alternatives, it remains dominant simply because breaking the habit of typing on QWERTY isn't worth the marginal benefit of switching to a new layout. Lastly, companies can afford to be more flexible with pricing when it comes to habit-forming products. Once customers are hooked, they become less price-sensitive. Consider online games that start off free after users have formed a habit around playing. Many are willing to pay once the free option ends just to keep their routine going. Habit-forming products rely on users repeatedly going through the 4 stages of the hook model. With so many benefits, it's no surprise that companies aim to design products that naturally form habits. But how do they achieve this? The answer lies in following the hook model. This model is a cycle with 4 steps, and when users go through it enough times, they begin to form a habit around the product. These are the 4 stages. The trigger. This is an external cue that prompts us to try the product for the first time, like seeing a TV commercial. The action. This involves what we need to do to use the product, such as signing up for an online community. The reward. This is the satisfaction of the need that motivated us to act in the first place, like being entertained if we were bored. The investment. This is when we put something of value into the product, whether it's time, money, or information. The beauty of this cycle is that the final step loops right back to the beginning. As users continue to go through these steps, they shift from relying on external triggers to developing internal ones. This means that instead of needing a prompt from outside, users will feel an impulse to use the product on their own. Over time, these internal triggers grow stronger to the point where users don't even think about whether or not they want to use the product, they just do it. The cycle becomes a self-reinforcing chain reaction. The hook model is a powerful tool for shaping long-term behavior. Now, let's take a closer look at each step in more detail. To kickstart the habit-building process, products need an external trigger. Habits don't form on their own. People don't just wake up one day and decide to become devoted users of an app that adds a retro effect to their photos. It's a gradual process, and it all begins with an external trigger. In the case of that app, maybe a friend recommended it or you saw an ad that made you curious enough to try it. The external trigger is crucial because at first the product isn't part of the user's routine. Take Facebook, for example. While you may check it multiple times a day now, you probably needed an external nudge to get started, perhaps an invitation from a friend already using it. These external triggers serve as calls to action and can come in many forms. Companies might use paid triggers like advertisements that encourage users to try their product, or they might rely on relationship triggers which spread virally when users invite others to join, as we saw with Facebook's early growth. For an external trigger to work, it must offer the user a simple, clear action to take. If the process is too complex, the user likely won't engage. Imagine you want to join a new social networking site, but finding the registration page is difficult or filling out the form takes too long. You'd probably give up. On the other hand, a straightforward register now button increases the chances you'll sign up, making the trigger effective. Once internal triggers are in place, that's when we're truly hooked. As we've discussed, frequent use is crucial to forming a habit. The more often we use a product, the more likely we are to develop a long-term habit around it. However, companies can't depend solely on external triggers like ads to drive this frequency. Such triggers are often expensive and hit or miss depending on whether a potential customer happens to see an ad. This means that to effectively guide a customer through the hook model repeatedly, the trigger must eventually come from within the customer. So, how do companies achieve this? It starts with addressing problems. Products are typically used to avoid pain or seek pleasure. Consider why we buy food, clothes, or smartphones. We're usually trying to avoid something unpleasant like hunger, cold, or loneliness, or gain something pleasurable like looking good or being entertained. Sometimes it's a combination of both. When we associate a product with solving a problem or fulfilling a need, we create an internal trigger. For instance, if a product consistently alleviates boredom, that feeling of boredom becomes an internal trigger for using the product. Negative emotions often make the strongest internal triggers. Many of us turn to social networks or smartphones out of boredom, fear of missing out, or stress about uncertainty, which drives us to seek comfort or information through these devices. As these internal triggers become stronger, we feel increasingly compelled to use the product. However, triggers are just cues. Actual usage depends on additional factors, which will be explored next. For a product to truly engage users, it must not only trigger action, but also motivate and enable users to act. Think of a hypnotist who, with a single trigger word, makes a volunteer perform specific actions. With habit-forming products, a trigger alone isn't enough to drive action. According to one behavioral model, 3 conditions must be met: a trigger, sufficient motivation, and the ability to act. Without these, the trigger won't lead to the desired action. Companies need to focus on enhancing these aspects to make their products effective. If increasing motivation proves challenging, prioritizing ease of use is a practical strategy. It's often simpler and more cost-effective to streamline the user experience than to boost motivation. For instance, a social networking site can increase user engagement by simplifying its registration process. Motivation plays a crucial role as well. Users are more likely to take action if they achieve the outcomes they desire from the product. Generally, human motivation revolves around seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, hoping for positive outcomes and avoiding fear, and gaining social acceptance while avoiding rejection. Emotional triggers are powerful motivators, which is why advertisements frequently use them. For example, sexual imagery is often employed in ads to evoke emotional responses, particularly targeting teenagers by promising pleasure. So a trigger will prompt us to use a product if we can and want to. But what makes us continue using it until it becomes a habit? That's the next piece of the puzzle we need to explore. Variable rewards are essential for creating long-term user dependency on a product. While motivation is crucial for getting us to try something new, we won't keep using it unless it consistently delivers the results we're after. A product needs to provide a reward for our actions and meet our expectations. However, this alone isn't enough to maintain our interest over time. For sustained engagement, variable rewards are key. Research shows that our craving for rewards can actually lead to a stronger emotional reaction than the rewards themselves. Anticipation plays a significant role here. If the reward is predictable, our excitement diminishes quickly compared to when the reward is unpredictable. Variability impacts our brain chemistry in a way that heightens our drive for rewards. Think about how the unpredictable feed on Twitter, with its mix of news and messages, creates a compelling experience. This unpredictability makes it feel more rewarding. To ensure users become reliant on a product, it's effective to incorporate a variety of rewards. These can address social needs like receiving likes or friend requests on Facebook, offer resources like winning on a slot machine, or provide personal satisfaction, such as completing challenging levels in a game. The key is that the reward must align with the user's initial motivation. For instance, on online question and answer forums, users often contribute for the social recognition they receive. When some sites tried offering cash rewards instead, they found these were less effective because they didn't match the user's original motivation. Once users have invested something, whether it's time, money, effort, or personal data, into a product, a habit is more likely to develop. So after a trigger prompts action and delivers a reward, what's the final step in the hook model that leads back to the trigger and initiates another cycle? It's investment. Investment is crucial because it increases the likelihood that users will return to the product. Why does this happen? First, we tend to value things more highly when we've invested something into them. Research shows that we place greater worth on items we've created ourselves compared to those made by others. Similarly, if we've put time and effort into building something like a social network online, we're more likely to value and continue using it. Second, we strive for consistency in our behavior. Studies reveal that our past actions are strong indicators of future actions. If we've invested in a product by using it frequently, we're likely to continue using it. Finally, we often adjust our worldview to fit our behavior, which in turn reinforces that behavior. Consider your first experience with beer or wine. It might not have been pleasant at first, but seeing others enjoy it led you to keep trying it. Over time, your behavior adapted and you began to like it. Similarly, when users feel invested in a product, they often adjust their preferences to rely on it more. If this cycle of trigger, action, reward, and investment repeats enough times, users will form a habit around the product. In essence, they become hooked. The power of the hook model is significant, and it raises important questions about how it should be used responsibly, which will be explored in the upcoming chapters. Companies need to wield the power of habit-building products with care. When we talk about getting users hooked on a product, the first thought that often comes to mind is addiction. The hook model can indeed alter people's behavior, so it's essential that companies use it responsibly to avoid unethical manipulation. For instance, if a fast food company were to add an addictive substance to its products, it would be deemed unethical. However, some forms of manipulation are considered acceptable if they improve users' lives. Take Weight Watchers, for example. While their methods might be seen as manipulative, they ultimately help users achieve their goal of losing weight, which is generally seen as a positive outcome. So how can companies or entrepreneurs determine if their use of the hook model is ethical? They should ask themselves two key questions. Does the product enhance users' lives? Would the entrepreneur themselves use the product? If the answer to both questions is no, the product is likely morally questionable. Consider a drug dealer who aims to get clients hooked. The product certainly doesn't enhance their lives, and the dealer wouldn't use it themselves. Conversely, if a company offers a product that the founder would use, but it doesn't necessarily enhance customers' lives, it could still be acceptable if it falls into the category of entertainment. Ultimately, every salesperson, product designer, and entrepreneur has a responsibility to consider how their product impacts customers. The extraordinary power of the hook model magnifies this moral responsibility, especially since it can be used to help people solve their problems in meaningful ways. To leverage the hook model effectively, you need a deep understanding of both your product and your customer base. Every entrepreneur and product designer aims to create something that people use frequently and depend on. The hook model can help achieve this, but it requires a thorough grasp of your product and customer needs. First, it's crucial to recognize that not all products need to be habit-forming. Whether you're launching a new product or refining an existing one, ask yourself if it truly needs to form a habit. For instance, life insurance doesn't need to be habit-forming because people generally buy it once and move on. Habit-forming features are best suited for products that benefit from ongoing, frequent engagement. If your goal is to develop a habit-forming product, start by analyzing what your customers need and how your product meets those needs. Your product should consistently provide solutions to your users' problems to build a habitual use. For a new product, identify what potential customers seek and how your product can fulfill that. Tailor the hook model elements such as triggers and rewards to fit these insights. For enhancing an existing product, examine your habitual users to understand the origin of their habits. This can help you find patterns or commonalities that you can use to encourage other users to develop similar habits. There are numerous ways to apply the hook model. depending on your product and market. By aligning your product's offerings with customer needs and guiding them through the hook model effectively, your product is likely to succeed. Habit-building products are like the holy grail for consumer companies. They not only attract a loyal following, but also practically sell themselves. The secret behind these products lies in the hook model. This cycle starts with a trigger that prompts action, which leads to a reward. Over time, as users invest their time and effort, the cycle repeats, embedding the habit even deeper. So, how can you apply this to your own life? If you're trying to pick up a new habit, like flossing daily or hitting the gym, remember that repetition is key. The more you repeat the action, the more likely it is to become a natural part of your routine. On the flip side, it's useful to recognize how habit-forming products work on you. Take a moment to think about the triggers that get you using these products throughout your day. Are they external cues like ads or internal ones like a feeling of boredom? Reflect on whether these products are manipulating you or if they're genuinely improving your life.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the Author Echoes for more content like this. Drop a comment below to let us know what you found most interesting, or if you want us to cover any books that we haven't yet. Until next time, keep pushing towards your goals.